The 76ers made a lot of moves this offseason. With that comes a lot of hype. But let's discuss this offseason as a whole. Are they closer to winning a championship than they were at the end of last season? We'll talk about that and more next on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now through September the 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, I'm Keith Pompey, and this is my right-hand man, John Mitchell. We are the co-hosts of Locked On 76ers, and we're starting to ramp things back up. You know, the summertime has been a little slower. Let's say the month of September, a little bit of August has been a little slow, but we're getting right back into it. So you'll be seeing more of us beginning next week. But for now, we want to talk about the off season and, you know, just do some off season discussion, chatter, and all this and that. And when you look at it, the 76ers have been the team that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
The team that everyone says, look, they got Paul George. Oh, they have Caleb Martin. Oh, they got the guy from France. Oh, I'm just, you know, a lot of different things. But when we break it all down, have some of the concerns that you had about the Sixers, have they subsided?
Mm-hmm.
What about are they closer to winning the championship than they were before? I mean, or let me say closer to getting out of the second round than they were before?
Yeah.
You know, you can say that, Mitch, I can say that they elevated a little bit or a lot, but I still don't have them as a favorite to come out of the East or make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I just don't.
Yeah.
And the reason being is when I look at the 76ers roster, and we'll talk more about other things,
Mm-hmm.
it has two things. The one major concern is Joel Embiid's health. And that's something we'll talk about in a second. But to me, when I look at this roster, they have so many unanswered questions that we have to figure out, to where I look at the New York Knicks and I look at the Boston Celtics, and I still have to say they're number 1 and 2 in the East. Right? You know what I mean? Now, the Indiana Pacers did beat New York last year, and they did go to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Pacers, right? But so we're not even talking about them. But when I look at what the Knicks did in regards to getting Mikal Bridges, and you see all the other moves that they made, I kind of believe that, you know, we're talking a lot about the 76ers, but even still, because of the unknowns, I still don't have them coming out of the second round.
What, Keith?
I mean, I'm serious. I have to see more. Like, I have to.
That's what makes you the top tier NBA beat writer, who I know can't wait to get who I know can't wait to get back into those airplanes and spend the next 8 to 9 months of your life sitting in airports and running through airports. But you know, when you look at the competition, you know, it's there's some question. Interestingly enough, the best team in the division, the best team in the league's got some health questions. But even with the health questions, they won the championship. Those being the Boston Celtics. When you, I mean, you know, the Knicks are much improved. They are much improved. You know, Jalen Brunson is now in the MVP discussion. Mikal Bridges is, you know, homeboy who should have never left the team, the 76ers. Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, and of course the Villanova guys, Precious Achiuwa. They've got a really good roster. But I'm going to the 76ers. To me, they are that new toy. They're that new car that's sitting in the garage. They're that red and blue Corvette that you're waiting to take the dust cover off and get out there and see what it looks like. And that's where I am with them. I mean, they do come with their share of questions. You're adding Paul George, but you're not adding a prime Paul George, despite the fact he had a great season last year. But you're adding a 34-year-old Paul George. You have Tyrese Maxey coming back. Which is great. You've added a lot of age. You've added Caleb Martin. You've added Andre Drummond. So I think and I think I've grown to be more optimistic as the summer's going on. I was hoping that Olympic experience would do something for Joel, and I think and I do believe he got something out of it, just getting a taste of what it's like to win something. But there are question marks. And I mean, you can look at some other teams. Like one team I think is going to be interesting to watch. I think the Orlando Magic are going to be very interesting to watch. I think they take another step. But I'm a little more optimistic than you are, Keith, about them getting beyond the second round. I believe that this is a team that I think they're versatile. They've got a superstar, an absolute superstar when he's available. And they've also they've got one of the better emerging elite players in the league in Tyrese Maxey. Paul George. I mean, the one element of Paul George's game that I really want to see from him is what kind of defender he is. We know he can shoot the three ball. He can handle the ball. He can do a lot of things. But 34, my curiosity is, where his defensive skills at this stage in his career. So I do see them getting out of the second round. And let's be honest, after the summer they had, it's interesting that, timing is everything, right? And if you're looking at a team that loaded as they've been since they made that championship run, probably more loaded than, in 2001. But the division is better now. It's a lot. It's going to be for people who watch basketball on a nightly basis. It's a great division to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great division to watch. But to me, I can't say like with a lot of confidence that it's going to happen. I mean, I just can't. Just because you look at it, and it's a great division to watch, but I mean, the Sixers have a lot of unanswered questions, and these are questions. I mean, now we're not playing fantasy basketball. Like fantasy basketball, you look at it and you say, okay, you got 3 All-Stars,
Mm-hmm.
2 guys who could be Hall of Famers right now. Another guy who keeps emerging. But they have a lot of question marks, and after we get back from this read, maybe like we can talk about that.
Yeah,
question marks that they had.
Definitely. All right. Right now, let's talk about better health. Better health. What's something you love to learn as an adult? Do you make time to learn new things as often as you like, or was that lost in childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Could it be gardening? Could it be a new language? Or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? You know what? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on-NBA. Do it today, people. Do it today.
Definitely do it today. So, here's my concern, right? Now I have three concerns. Um, and one of them is, and we talked about this before, and a little bit in this segment. It's Joel Embiid's health. There was nothing that I saw in the Olympics that with his knee that let me say, okay, he's 100% over the
Right.
knee issue. And as good as the Sixers are, unless Paul George can like
Carry
him a little bit, help Maxey carry him, we know, and maybe he can, but that's to be seen. We know that when Joel Embiid goes down, they're out. So let's see how healthy he is. Now I get it. You have Andre Drummond, but Andre Drummond is a good player, but he's not the same impactful player as Joel Embiid is, right? He's not going to do the things that Joel can. So then secondly is, how is Paul George going to fit in? On paper, we all say he's a great guy, but is he going to be like, is he going to be the assertive Paul George? Is he going to be just let everything go, like flow, and just focus on defense? And if he is the assertive Paul George and doing stuff, how is that going to impact Maxey's game? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, who's going to be the starting lineup? Like, on paper, we're all saying that it's going to be Kelly Oubre, it's going to be Caleb Martin, it's going to be PG, it's going to be Maxey, it's going to be Embiid. But is that lineup really going to work against teams that have size, right?
Yeah.
So to me, there's just a lot of unanswered questions that you ultimately have to spend at least half a season to figure out if it's going to work out. You know what I mean? And that's, to me, that's the reason why when I look at these other teams, well, you already know what the chemistry is going to be like. You know that Mikal Bridges, even though he's never played with these guys on a pro level, but he's won that 2 national championships with them on the college level, and they are all best friends, right? So you know that's going to be a seamless transition. You know what I mean? You look at the Boston Celtics. They didn't lose anyone. Now they do have Porzingis who's injured, but then you look at a guy like you look at a guy like Lonnie Walker the fourth, who they signed to an Exhibit 10 deal, like a training camp deal. So and then Ron Harper Jr. So to me, it's kind of like you're looking at this team, and this is a team that's just got deeper, right? These dudes may not even make the roster, but that's all I'm saying. So to me, it's not like, I'm just trying to be real. Like, on paper, it all sounds great, but how is it going to work? How's it going to work?
Yeah. I mean, one thing about professional sports now is that there's so much more. It's become, because of the revenues now, they're more plug and play. Whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever. I'm looking at the 76ers roster. You're right, because you have to make allowances for those stretches where Joel's not going to be here. And the positive there is that you do have Drummond. You do have Drummond, who when he's out there, he's going to rebound. He's going to set strong screens. He'll and now having a guy like Paul George, having a guy that's more reliable than, say, just looking at their roster last year, you don't, not to beat up on Tobias, we wish him all the best in Detroit of all places, but my whole thing when I look at the 76ers is you kind of know what you have in Joel Embiid. You have a guy who's going to be in a discussion for MVP every year. If he can make that 65-game threshold. And unfortunately, that's the thing that always comes up. Is you mentioned Joel Embiid, and then it's comma. So you don't exactly know what you have. Um, I do feel confident enough to say, looking at that roster, that I do think that I think Max is going to continue his ascension. I mean, even if he scores at the same clip, I mean, I don't just naturally expect a progression where he goes from say 25 points per game to 28 points per game because they've got a lot of guys who can score. But I think he becomes a better, at the quality of his game goes. The numbers can stay the same for all I'm concerned. They really can. I'd like to see him have a few more assists. But I'm a little more confident you are, Keith. And the more I do look at that New York roster, man, it is a good roster. It is a good roster. We hope that their coach will burn them out as he has burned out other teams in Chicago. And they're just tired of him in Minnesota. But he has that was a bad chemistry situation right there. So we will see, and we can talk about that a little bit more when we get back from talking about FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit fanduel.com and download America's #1 sports book. Do it today. And what we also want to do is we want to thank you for making Locked On Sixers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Every single day. So I mean, the thing is, so my thing is so I get where you're coming from, and I understand it, and a lot of people are basing their stuff on hope. They're basing their stuff on expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing is my concerns are, we're talking about basing it on Joel Embiid staying healthy. And that's something that he hasn't been able to do throughout his career. And the last time we saw him playing in the Olympics, he appeared to be still a little hobbled by that knee, either that or out of shape, right?
Yeah.
But I think his being out of shape had to do with his ability. He needed to rest the knee. So the thing is, yes, if Joel Embiid can stay healthy for an entire season, and then come in the playoffs at a high level, then yes, right? But then secondly is, how is Kyle Lowry? How is Paul George? How is Eric Gordon? How are guys like that who are older players going to be able to deal with the wear and tear in this latter stages of their career? There's 82 game season. Now, granted, I probably don't think that, like last year, Kyle didn't play on back-to-backs, right? Will this be the same, right? So you have that. Well, Reggie Jackson is another older one, right?
Yeah.
So these are guys that you look at it, these are all guys that you would think that the 76ers are going to have to depend on at some capacity, right? Yeah. And then another question mark is, and I like him, Caleb Martin, is, the thing is, typically guys who leave Miami in free agency tend to have a drop off in their production when they go elsewhere. So much so to a point where there are certain teams that are leery to make trades with them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how is he going to perform? Now, again, he could perform great. He could do everything. Paul George, Kyle Lowry, all these guys, Kyle could find a fountain of youth. Paul George could have another season like he had last year. All that is possible. But for right now, it's just me is I just want to I'm taking a wait and see approach towards that.
Yeah.
Before I just like everybody's like, oh, look at this. We're playing fantasy basketball. They all look great. Well, I'm looking at it that they went from being one of the young emerging teams several years ago to them being one of the oldest teams now. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
and
the
and
biggest.
you know,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, bruh. These dudes we're talking about outside of Paul George, they're on minimum salary contracts. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like they were guys who teams were saying, yo, we got to throw money at them. Like,
Yeah.
as much as you could say about Tobias Harris, and I know some people might say, is Detroit, he still got 20 something mil. So, with that being said, it's like he was a priority for them,
Yeah.
right? How many of these guys, none of them got outside of a 1 year, 1 year minimum deal.
Yeah.
So that's just my concern.
Yeah.
These are people you're dependent on.
Yeah. And it's when you talk about going all in, and oftentimes, most times, particularly when you when you assemble a roster where you're going to play, at least three guys, 200 plus million, as much cap space as they had, going into this past off season. They threw everything at it. It was all in. We were tossing around names like, can they get LeBron? DeMar DeRozan's name came up. All these guys, because Jimmy Butler's name came up, because we knew, and unfortunately we knew, all the guys that came up. The one knock is that you can't stop Father Time. You can't stop push of Father Time, and that's where they are. Having said that, I still like what they have. And I understand your questions because everything is contingent on health and age. And you're right. They really, once they got, extended Maxey, sign Paul George, they were in a situation like that. That's your roster. We've been watching big threes ever since, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, and, Magic Johnson, the Boston Celtics, the Detroit Pistons, the Bad Boys. There's always been that big three. And, people talk about having a big two, but, I mean, in Boston, they got a big four. But, boy, they sure have put that team together well. But, it's where the 76ers are now is I do believe that I think they're in the mix, Keith. And I set the bar high for this team, man. I think that, and again, they'll go, and everybody knows what we're getting ready to say, pause. They will go only as far as Joel's health and conditioning will take them. Now, if Joel comes in ready to go, and the first thing is just to come in shape. If Joel comes in shape, I think, and there are some questions about how easy it is to play off him, but I think a guy like Paul George, a guy who can slash to the basket, you can put the ball in his hands and you can play him off the ball, and a guy like Tyrese Maxey, I'm this team. It wouldn't surprise me if this team they could go. I don't see him as a second round elimination. I don't. I say their ceiling. I say their ceiling is the NBA Finals and the NBA championship, and I don't say it easily like it's just like, yeah, we're just playing to be an NBA championship, but I do think that they're right there on the cusp. Now it could, and we did a segment last week, the worst scenarios and the best case scenarios. Every single 76er scenario falls on the shoulders of Joel Embiid. You know, he has to stay healthy. You know,
Yeah, I just have to, and again, you know, I'm just saying, you know, I just have to see it. That's
yeah,
all. I mean,
yeah,
it's all great on paper, but I just have to see it because the one team that we're not talking about, like we mentioned them, is the Indiana Pacers.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That's the one team. Nobody's talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. Nobody is.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe they're not talking about the Bucks because some people may feel like we know about Doc Rivers talking about in Philadelphia as a coach. They may look at it and say, you know, that tandem didn't work out, you know, this and that. But I'm talking about the trio with Dame, Chris Middleton, and Giannis. That didn't work out.
yeah,
But you got to realize they got to be motivated too. So
yeah,
that's a great test for the Sixers
yeah,
early in the season.
yeah. And we have overlooked them. You know,
Yeah, people. I
yeah,
mean, you know, so but you know, these were all teams that were ahead of the Sixers.
yeah.
Now, I do have the Sixers based off of what they did on paper, catapulting the Pacers, catapulting Milwaukee,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the main question is, can they are they can they stay healthy enough?
Yeah, I think
Are
it's
they will Father Time uh, could they? I mean, are they old? I mean, will their age?
be a
Can they
fact.
fight off their age being an issue? Um, can Paul George and Maxey and Embiid mesh well enough for
Mm-hmm.
them to get out of the second round? For them to beat one of those two teams to
Yeah.
get out of there? Now, you know what I mean. So that's just my question. Now, again, the main question mark that you have on New York is the backup center thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, how is Julius Randle going to readjust the plan with this team now that it has a new identity?
I think he'll be fine. I think
Yeah,
he'll.
I think he'll be
Yeah,
fine. But that's it, right? Those are the questions.
yeah.
Boston, how is Boston going to get by for the first couple months
Mm-hmm.
until the center comes back, right?
Right, right.
Porzingis. But so every team has questions that need to be answered. But to me, is the main thing is, and we haven't seen it yet.
We
We
have.
have yet to see. We've seen Joel Embiid have a healthy regular season for the most part, but then he
Right,
got hurt in the playoffs.
right.
So we have yet to see him go an entire campaign
Yeah,
without an injury. So that's
yeah.
that. You know, so there's a
It's
lot of questions. Now, again, on paper, everything's great, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of concerns to
yeah.
me when
And
it
you
comes.
know, he can contribute to his longevity and his availability by allowing his teammates to play off of him and do more, you know.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see. But look, thanks again for making Locked On 76ers your first listen today. Now go check out the Lock On NBA podcast where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description so you don't need to search. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We would like to thank y'all for listening, and we want y'all to have a blessed day. Peace, y'all.
Have a great one, folks.